Welcome to one more edition of Politics and Right. I'm Egberto, Willies, your host. Thank you so kindly for spending this time with us today. Houston, we are going to be all right. We had the worst flood in this country's history, but we will be okay. We will come together and we will do what is necessary to recover. For those who have lost loved ones, my most sincere condolences. For those who are finding themselves in dire straits, rest assured, we are a city that hangs together and a city that will continue to be together. Now, this flood has touched us all. This show today is coming to you from the West Coast. This show today is going to be a continuation of the show with great interviews that we had at Netroots Nation 2017. And what is Netroots Nation? Nothing more than the largest liberal, the largest progressive blogging conference in this country, where we all get together, schmooze with politicians and other activists in the field to make sure that we can bring the progressive message to America. Today, we're going to have Hustler Director of Tragic Partnership, LaToia A. Jones. We're also going to have the Young Turks journalist, Chariton. And we'll also have our own Houston LGBTQ activist, Monica Roberts, and Houston-owned Black Lives Matter activist, Ashton Woods. Of course, we're going to have Professor Richard Dien Winfield, who is running in a red district in Georgia, who is filling the promise of keeping every district competitive for the progressive message. And last but not least, we have Anoa Changa, who was one of the leaders of a protest at Netroots Nation that had a reason that we all must examine. So let's get busy and start with those interviews. LaToia Jones, I think I've known you for a long time, even though we haven't spoken, because every single Netroots Nation I've been to, the Black Bloggers Conference, and you were there and you always had something to say. Well, I heard you talking to the Young Turks earlier today, and I think you had a little issue. First, tell me what's the issue that you had with the Young Turks?
I don't have an issue with the Young Turks. The conversation stemmed from, I made a comment that I feel like progressives haven't really been supportive of black women in the way they should.
Right.
So my comment to them was that you can't continue to ask black women to have your back when you don't have our back in all instances. So that was a situation. Like, I like the Young Turks and I think they're dope for what they do, but I am just over the thought process that black women have to save the Democratic Party, save the Progressive Party, and no one's trying to save us. So that was a conversation.
Now, what specifically, when you say that black women don't get the support that you believe they should get from the Democratic Party, what specifically can you point to?
It's not just the DNC, it's the movement as a whole. So oftentimes when black women are on the ballot, they don't get the support. They have to work twice as hard to get half as far. They have to go through hoops to show that they are viable to run for office. And oftentimes, if you have a black woman who decides to run for office, she's put in the work. So my thing is that when you're looking at a race, make sure you look at the sister who's won, because she's been there. She's supported the candidate. She's done the work. Oftentimes, she has more experience than people in the room, but because she's a woman, she's a black woman or a woman of color, she doesn't automatically get the support.
Now, Pamela Harris, a lot of people have been throwing it out that maybe she would be considered, she should run for president. And one of the things that came from several people within the Democratic Party proper was that maybe it wasn't her time. Do you think that has something to do with it?
That time thing to me is funny, because you can never say when it's someone's time. I think Pamela should do what she wants to do. If she wants to run in 2020, run. But I also feel like there's Kristen Gillibrand, there's Elizabeth Warren, there's Terry McCullough. There's a swath of people who are actually going to run in 2020.
Right.
My issue is that no one's out there going at Kristen Gillibrand. No one's going at Elizabeth Warren. No one's going at Terry McCullough. But they are attacking Kamala Harris. And what I am saying is that what you're not going to do is attack a sister who is qualified to run for president if she wants to. So what I am saying is that if you want to make sure you have people in this in the black community and the black women support us. Again, I have not figured out who I want to support for 2020. But if Kamala wants to run, let her run. But what you're not going to do is talk about her saying that she's not qualified, or call her out her name, or act like she's this neoliberal, but when she's not.
She's definitely not a neoliberal.
That's not what you're not going to do that.
I think what you're saying is that
black women have supported the party altogether,
Yes.
but somehow whenever it is time for a black woman to be with it, to get the support that they're looking for from the party, it's not generally
Yeah,
there.
but it's not just the party; it's the movement as a
The
whole.
progressive movement.
The progressive movement. Like, my issue is that we're so quick to be a purist that we allow men to get away with things that we want to allow women to do, let alone women of color or black women. So what I am saying is that you need our vote. Point blank, to win any elections, the progressives and the Democratic Party need black women. So until you start showing that that you respect our vote, we might have to have another conversation.
LaToia Jones,
Yes.
thank you very much, and we meet again.
Yes, thank you.
All right. Okay, I'm with Jordan Chariton with the Young Turks, and one of the reasons I wanted to talk to you is I heard you talking about the Netroots Nation not really being a liberal or a progressive type of a conference, and I wanted to ask you a couple of questions about that. Are you an absolutist? Are you an idealist? Why would you not consider this progressive, maybe with a lesser degree of degradation?
No, I'm not an absolutist by no means. I think I have a different perspective than a lot of kind of liberal media or others, because I actually have been out in the country for the last year and a half,
right.
Probably like 80% of the time.
Right.
And I cover a lot of stories that are being ignored. The ongoing water crisis in Flint, the pipeline in North Dakota, Standing Rock, the lead crisis in East Chicago, all things the Democratic Party has largely ignored.
Right.
So I see, not only through those emergencies, but through the disappearing middle class, the policies that the Democratic Party and a lot of folks at conferences like this are pushing are not enough for the majority of the country. And I also saw on the campaign trail, people don't realize a lot of independents and Republicans like Bernie Sanders' message,
right.
which is a progressive economic message.
Right.
So to me, you're never going to agree on everything as a party, but on the major issues, to me, and a large portion of America, is economic inequality. I don't think the Democratic Party has learned a lesson from the election. Their proposals that they're pushing forward now do not go far enough. I think the phrase incrementalism or gradualism is really a mask for we'll give you crumbs because we got to please our donors. So that's how I view things.
No, I believe it or not, I think I agree with everything that you just said. Now, what I don't think I agree with is saying that particular statement about the Democratic Party or Netroots in this regard. I think there are many folks within the party, myself included, which I'm a devout activist as well as a journalist or a blogger. I think we were out there putting that exact message out there. What really happens is we don't have the coverage by the news media for people who are pushing that message. In other words, there's the Young Turks out there pushing that sort of message. There's Politics Done Right. There are several progressive stations out there trying to push it, but they do not get the coverage. What can we do to ensure that the ABC, CBS, NBC, CNNs, and others carry the message? Because my contention is there are enough within the party proper that have your message, but your message is simply not getting out there.
I'm going to tell you something that you're going to consider radical.
Okay.
I don't give a damn if CNN, ABC, the Washington Post
I don't think it's radical at all.
Carry our message. Because the bottom line is, these are all corporations.
Right.
They are run by multi-billion-dollar conglomerates.
Right.
Doesn't make them evil, but that's just a fact. So there is a certain line. And by the way, I used to work at Fox and MSNBC in the beginning of my career. So they are not going to focus on Standing Rock because it involves oil and big banks.
Yes.
They are not going to focus on Flint because it's not sexy to them and it doesn't give them ratings, and they need to get ratings for their corporate parents.
Right.
To me, and I think what the Young Turks tries to do, and I try to do as a reporter, is inform the public of the real news that's being ignored to activate the public.
Yes.
Because when I went to Standing Rock, I probably had between 100 and 200 people come up to me personally and say, your videos are why I came. When I was in Flint, there were 6 residents that were arrested for the crime of being too loud at a town hall. They were facing felony charges. I was the only reporter that stayed on it, and those charges were dropped. The reason, because our viewers rallied around those people. Our viewers called the mayor's office. Our viewers called the police department and flooded them. So the real how you get change is not only from CNN and the New York Times mentioning you.
Right.
They'll do it for 4 minutes and then they'll go back to what Trump is tweeting.
Right.
It's getting your audience not only informed but activated, because the audience is filled, not just my audience, I'm sure yours too, with other activists who are then going to be like, I didn't know that this is still going on in Flint or here or here.
Right.
Police brutality, financial corruption. It is political activism is very closely aligned with independent journalism, because a lot of our viewers want to do something.
Right.
They just don't know what. They need to know first, what are the problems.
Well, Jordan, I can't disagree with anything there as well, and I think that's a good statement. Now, there's one thing that I think I would ask of all of us doing this type of media, because we are all doing a whole lot of social media. We're all trying to get through alternative media, given that the main stations are not going to cover these things. But at the same time, I hope that all of us leave the doors open for those people that are still, I don't want to sound condescending, but somewhat misguided, but give them some space for us to bring them in.
Yeah.
Would you agree?
Yeah. Hey, listen, I always say this. Like, I don't love Nancy Pelosi politically.
Right.
I don't know Nancy Pelosi. I don't have a personal thing. I wish her well.
Right.
When Hillary Clinton, fell during the campaign, there was a lot of my viewers who wanted me to engage in kooky conspiracy theories and all this. I said, I'm not a doctor. I don't know what happened to her, but I don't like her policies, but I wish her well. I don't wish evil on anybody, because even if I think their policies are misguided, I would hope the majority of these politicians, they entered politics for the right reasons, you would hope. And at their root, they think they want to create change. I just think they're misguided on how they're going to create change or how bad the situation is. But no, I mean, the bottom line is, it's a lot of people, it takes longer for them to wake up. I think what the Young Turks is doing, I think what the progressive movement is doing is saying, no. The country is in a crisis. It's a 30 to 40-year crisis, and we cannot live under incrementalism anymore. We cannot live under gradualism. FDR was not an incrementalist. He saw the
Later
crisis.
in life, he wasn't. Yes.
Right. He saw the crisis at hand, and he instituted some serious changes in terms of policy. I believe if John F. Kennedy would have lived, you might have seen similar things to that. So I think the bottom line is, if Nancy Pelosi wants to come out tomorrow and say, you know what, I'm for Medicare for all, I will do jumping jacks for Nancy Pelosi. I don't agree on anything for her, but this is about policy, nothing else.
Jordan, Charlton, Young Turks.
Young Turks.
You're a good man. Thank you very much.
You too, sir. Thanks for having me.
All right. All right, we're here at Netroots Nation 2017, and as you know, we also have a Houston contingent, and slowly but surely I'm going to try to bring our Houston contingent into the fold. But anyhow, I'm here with Monica Roberts. Monica, I know Monica from KPFT and from some other places as well. She's here representing Houston very well. Monica, what are you doing at Netroots Nation 2017?
There's a bunch of different things I'm doing here in terms of, I'm the defending champion of the Pundit Cup that's going on currently.
That's
going
right.
on
You
right
won
now.
it last year.
Yeah,
she is a winner of the Pundit Cup, which means she's a darn good speaker.
Yeah. So I was watching some of the some of the folks who are competing for my throne this year.
Right.
I've got 3 panel discussions. One was early at 9, during the 9 o'clock session yesterday.
So you went out last night and still had to do a panel.
I still had to do a panel the next morning.
And then, now what was that panel about?
It was one where we were talking about progressive, local organizing for progressive wins, and we have a lot to talk about from the Texas perspective on
SB4,
that. And flipping Harris County blue,
exactly,
and getting rid of getting rid of Devin Anderson and replacing her with Kim Hogg, replacing Ron Hickman. So we had a lot to talk about positively that came out of our state,
right? And
I've also have 2 panels that are happening on tomorrow, in which we're talking about LGBT issues and from a black perspective.
Now, what do you expect? I mean, that's interesting. The LGBT issues from a black perspective. What do you mean with that?
Well, just like anything else in society, the LGBT community is a microcosm of the parent society at large.
Of course,
so
exactly.
Whatever isms and ills that are in the parent society are in the LGBT community, and it's sad to say, racism is one of them.
Right.
So how even as myself as a transgender person, I don't experience it in the same way as my white counterparts do.
Right.
My white counterparts do. And we also have issues that are unique to us as black people.
Right. So I imagine you're going to come here now on a national level and discuss those issues and see how it affects other states as well.
Well, not only that, it's also seeing my friends in the activist community from around the country and around the planet.
Right.
Also, reconnecting with those folks.
Right.
I'll say meeting new people, actually going to different panels. I did have a chance to go to different panels yesterday, and actually hone my skills as an activist, because you can't say you always are in learning mode.
That's why we come here. That's why you come to Netroots Nation, to interact, to network, and learn how to move forward
and make you a better advocate.
Right now, lastly, what's your last panel?
That last panel is also something related to the LGBT community as a whole.
But it's not racially based, that particular one?
I don't think so. Okay. I had to look at the time on that one.
So are you getting what you expected to get out of Netroots this year? I mean, you're here every year. So.
Well, I said this is actually the first time I've done consecutive ones.
Oh, okay, all right.
Because I did the one in St. Louis last year,
right,
and this one in Atlanta. But my first Netroots was in 2012 in Providence, and it was
that was a wild one. That was a good one,
and it was for an all trans panel. It was the first time that Netroots had done an all trans panel, and I was the lone person of color on that one. So
I do remember that. Yes, absolutely so.
So I was. I not only got a chance to be on that panel, which was early. Once again, it was like the first day of the conference.
Right.
I got a chance later on to just basically wander, and just wander the facility in Providence and ended up in the Black Caucus.
Right.
And there was an interesting discussion that was happening where folks in the Black Caucus were like talking about the LGBTQ community as if we were just some kind of separate entity.
Exactly.
And myself and another gentleman who was in there, with me, Victor Kearney, we were like, hello, you have two representatives from the Black LGBT community here, and we didn't give up our black cards because we are also part of that community.
Exactly.
You do remember the word intersectionality
also
plays a part in this.
Yes.
And so Elon James White and Ljoy Williams were moderating that panel.
Right.
They invited me to do a radio interview on This Week in Blackness.
Right.
Okay, and remember the Providence was where the radio setup was right there on Radio Row.
I remember that.
And then Michelangelo Signorile heard my interview on This Week in Blackness. I ended up on his show as well. So it's kind of like, it was a little bit like my big coming out as a national activist, even though I've been that for almost 20 years. You're doing it
locally, but now you actually had national exposure. Well, that's what Netroots is here for, and that's what we do here. A lot of people have been made from this particular conference. So look, it's been my pleasure to speak to you, Monica, and you're representing Houston well.
And thank you as a member of the KPFT family. Because I say one thing I do miss is having that after hours platform to talk.
Right.
And the late Jimmy Carper was an icon. And
absolutely.
And he is definitely missed in the radio world, in our progressive radio world.
Absolutely.
And folks, KPFT is vitally important to having that progressive voice out there. So when they ask y'all for money, donate.
Thank you, Monica. It's great seeing you.
Yeah, all right, you too.
All right, bye-bye. All right, Facebook Live Politics done right. It just seems like the Houston folks are just piling on and following that KPFT sign. And who shows up but Ashton Woods, a resident radical activist out of Houston, Texas. How you doing, Ashton?
I'm doing pretty good. I'm just and I feel white people for making the best of it and learning what I can.
But it's not only what you're doing as well as you're kind of doing. What is the word that we like to say? You're teaching. You're being a teaching module right here, aren't you?
Yes.
Now, tell me how are you finding the conference this time around?
In comparison to previous experiences, a lot better.
I saw you in St. Louis.
Yeah.
I saw you in Arizona. What do you think about this?
This is definitely better. It's a little bit.
It's very well organized. Yeah.
Right. A lot better organized. It kind of reminds me of Creating Change.
Right.
A little bit. So I do like that. I do like that the subject matter with the different classes are more specific to different crowds.
Right.
And not just kind of one-sided.
But you know what is interesting? The venue is smaller, but there are more people.
I know.
It's amazing. I found that shocking because it was like we probably should have done it this way because people can get around a lot easier.
Well, right. Instead of going from a hotel to
from one hotel to a convention center, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Now, what panels have you been to so far?
To be honest with you,
yeah,
I have a panel tomorrow called Talking About Black.
So you're going to be
tomorrow at 1 o'clock, Talking About Black. But I want to say that I went to the Black Caucus today,
right.
And then before that, I went to see Kimberly Crenshaw,
right,
the one and only intersectionality queen,
right,
speak. And so yesterday I didn't really attend anything, but I'm actually the sponsor. Black Lives Matter Houston is the sponsor of a space that we created for people of color only, that no white folks can go in and we could just go in and chill.
Now, I'm not going to address that one because there are a few incidents in Houston that occurred that we're going to have to discuss offline sometime.
We can discuss it online.
We're not going to discuss it online. As you know, this is my show. Anyhow, let me ask you, as far as, by the way, how was the Black Caucus? Because I forgot to attend this year. Actually, it's not that I forgot to attend, it's that I was in another meeting. Come on in, man. I forgot to attend. How was it this year?
It was pretty good. There was no BS.
Okay,
that's the best way I can put it. Like, we had real conversations about anti-blackness, about the root of anti-blackness, racism,
right,
white supremacy, that type of thing.
Okay, well, good. So I'm glad. Some years it kind of devolved into things that we didn't want it to devolve into. But right. Now, so give me your overall experience of what you thought or what you think of Netroots Nation, not only for this, but how they're progressing and dealing with what progressives should really be. Because as you know, right now there's an issue with progressives not being progressives on several issues, both on the racial issues and on the social justice issues. So, and to some extent, the social economic issues.
Right. Well, social justice is social economic.
Right. But I like to separate them for specific reasons.
Well, let's say for the sake of argument, we're talking about a space that's predominantly white.
Right.
So that they have gotten a little better with the way they approach people of color, specifically black people, and how they speak to them and how they address them in general. But I think that we're talking about a space that has barriers to entry, like fees,
right.
You have to travel to get to them. So they're not actually serving a purpose as far as building a relationship with the communities of minorities or people of color or black people. I think they're having better programming, yes.
Right.
That is acknowledging all of the crap that we go through in their communities. But the thing is that so far the conferences has been pretty good. I haven't had any issues. Mm-hmm. But, you know,
I want to put a word in for Netroots that I found very encouraging, and that is this year and better than others as well, there were a lot of scholarships given for people to come here, and a lot of people got needs-based scholarships. There's something else that I want to address when it comes to, let's say, a racial issue. We have to realize, even in what we're talking about, that not all of us, not all black folks, don't have money. So black folks do come here who have money and who don't have money on scholarships.
Well, that's a given.
And also another thing is that all white folks don't have money, and there are a lot of folks in Appalachia who belong here as well, because we need to enlighten Appalachia, because enlightening them will also help us with our voting, with how we vote election time. So we really need to reach them as well.
You know I understand that, right?
I do, but
you felt the need to say it
because we have an audience.
Okay, so Now, as far as the audience is concerned, I guess, listen, I'm not worried about the white working class voter.
I understand.
They're going to do what they want to do anyway. I heard somebody give a speech to the plenary talked about everything about bad water supplies that white people experience in West Virginia, and not once mentioned Flint or the little towns in Louisiana where I'm from originally. And it's like, you can have, as a white person, the lowest of information and income and still have a better life chance than somebody like me. Or any other black person for that matter. So, I mean, I agree with you, but let's not forget that in order to get a president that is not going to destroy the planet, it doesn't mean that we have to cater to people who will definitely not piss on us when we're on fire.
We are not saying, before we close the show, I just want to make it clear. We're not saying, what we're saying is, we're not saying that at all. We're saying that we take care of all, and we also we take care of all. And in the process of taking care of all, we make sure that black folks, Latinos, and all the others are taken care of as well. Good.
I would say my work speaks for itself.
There you go, brother. You have a good one.
All right.
Thank you very much, Ashton.
We'll be right back as soon as Shannon is done giving us an update on the weather and the traffic. This is KPFT 90.1 FM, Houston.
I'm here with Professor Richard Dien Winfield, and he's doing something that we've been talking about for a long time. Every single congressional district must be challenged. And he stepped up to the plate, or he's likely stepping up to the plate. He's formed an exploratory committee to step up to the plate to be that candidate at great peril. Mr. Dien Winfield, it's a pleasure being with you.
Thank you.
Please tell me a little bit about why are you considering running for, what district is it in?
This is the 10th district of Georgia, which contains as its largest city Athens, a university town.
Right.
That's fairly liberal and democratic leaning, but it's surrounded by a rural, rather economically depressed hinterland, which is extremely conservative and has voted for Republican candidates who often run unopposed.
But this time they're not unopposed. They're likely not going to be unopposed.
Yeah, I am planning to run. I will announce officially in January.
Okay. Now, it seems to me like people should really consider you because you're doing something none of these other politicians have to do. You're a state employee. Yeah. Tell us what makes it difficult for you to run as a state employee.
Well, as a state employee, I am required by law to go on unpaid leave as soon as I become an official candidate. Now, I think this reflects the difficulties employees in general have running for office.
Right.
They supposedly have a right to run for office, but in reality, an employee will have to give up their work and all the associated benefits if they're going to take on a serious campaign. And moreover, when the campaign's over and if they lose, they're likely not to have a job to go back to. So it's very difficult for any employees to run for office, and that's reflected in who it is who occupies Congress and the Senate, which are now filled on average by millionaires and multimillionaires.
Exactly. So this is going to cost you, not counting your pay, about what in benefits is this going to cost you?
Yeah, I probably will have to pay something on the order of $12,000, $13,000
So that is your investment in activism to ensure that seat is challenged.
Well, I will take the plunge. Well, I think it's important. I want to get positions out there that I feel no government officials and no candidates, including a Democratic Party, including people like Bernie Sanders, have put forward, that we need to advocate in order to, in a sense, save the American dream and uphold American democracy.
Well, what I'm going to ask you to do is give me that litany of positions that you think that you're taking that you think Democrats in general aren't but need to.
Okay. And to frame it all, I think we can say that the United States had this glorious project which is enshrined in the Constitution, of upholding civil and political rights. Mm-hmm. They were inconsistently interpreted and enforced, and there have been more than 200 years of civil rights struggles of various kinds that have made them be more consistently applied, but it's become more and more evident that these civil and political rights are not sufficient to uphold our social freedoms and to make it possible for everyone to have an equal opportunity to engage in political self-determination. So we need to advance a new social bill of rights. And the anchor of that is recognition and enforcement of the true right to work. Not the phony right to work that all the former slave states have, which deprive state workers like myself of the right to organize. The true right to work is that where every willing and able adult is guaranteed employment at a fair living wage. And I think a fair living wage is at least $20 an hour. And the reason for that is the $20 figure incorporates a fundamental connection that a fair wage depends upon. And that is the connection between one's wage and productivity levels. Back in 1973, that connection between wage rates and productivity gains ended. And that meant the standard of living of most Americans began to decline. It had risen from the end of World War II through 73 because wages rose in tandem with productivity gains. That stopped happening in 73. The minimum wage in 68 was $1.60 an hour. If you adjust it for inflation, that comes to about $10.51. If you adjust it, however, for productivity gains, it's over $22.
Now, Richard Wolff, an economist, has a whole subject on that where he proves that, and he also proved that the success of the 80s and early 90s were actually built on credit. So that is such an important concept. What's your other platform position?
Well, I think this is a game changer in itself. I think everyone knowing when they come out of school they have a full-time job at a living wage that would serve the public good because government would have to step in and provide jobs that are going to build a green infrastructure, provide broadband for all, provide all the services people need to get by. Well, and this, of course, would apply to people coming out of prison. They would have a job guaranteed to them. People coming back from the military would have a job guaranteed to them. We who have employment would know we don't have to worry about being downsized on part-time work. We have a fundamental economic security. But in addition to that, this does not itself deal with the imbalance between the power and opportunities of employers versus employees. And we have to take some fundamental steps that no one is putting forward on this score. So on the one hand, we have to transform corporate governance. We have to ensure that employees have a fair foot in the table, meaning corporate boards have to have half their members drawn from non-managerial employees elected by their peers.
Somewhat like Germany.
Yeah, exactly. And you can see how that would transform how corporations make decisions about the pay of CEOs. No longer would it be 300 times the average worker. It would have a tremendous impact on how automation is handled, how outsourcing is handled, how environmental policies are handled, how corporations relate to politics. All of these things would be radically transformed. On the other hand, we need to do something that will remedy the complete disempowerment of employees in this country, where labor unions have fallen to 6% of the workforce in the private sector, and the NLRB is not sufficient. The activity of unions trying to organize is not working. So we need to step in by law and require all employers, multiple employers, full-time, part-time, gig economy, freelancers, require collective bargaining with the elected representative of their employees. And that will really fundamentally alter the framework. But again, that's not enough. We've got to deal with the balance between work and family, because you're not going to take advantage of guaranteed employment and employee empowerment if you can't take care of your family. So we need, on the one hand, to require employers to give employees the time to deal with their family responsibilities. We need to have a 1-month paid vacation for everyone. We need to have a 9-month paid parental leave. But in addition to that, we have to make the care for our children, for our elders, affordable. We have to have free public daycare, free public elder care. And since we need more money depending upon how many dependents we have, we need to eliminate childhood poverty, which affects almost 50% of our children. We need to have a child allowance of at least $500 per child per month And that will fundamentally transform
the
situation.
What you're saying is interesting. A lot of people would immediately look at you and say, that is socialism, and we're not a socialist state. Well, I don't have a problem really with democratic socialism at all, but many do. That said...
Well, no, this has absolutely nothing to do with state ownership, means of production. It's rather a matter of making capitalism ethical. It's redeeming capitalism.
I understand that. You understand that. The propagandists won't reveal it that way. Remember, we had something called the Powell Manifesto, which was the path to indoctrinate Americans into fear things like what you are stating. As we liberalized in this country, we required more, and we actually realized who really was the driver of our economy. Not the Wall Street guys. They're just the master-slave relationship with who drives the economy.
I mean, who are the real job creators?
Exactly.
It's not profit seekers.
No, it's not. Yes.
It's employees. Because what do? We spend most of our income, much more of our income. It goes back into the economy. It creates consumer demand. It allows for the hiring of new workers to meet that demand.
Now, what you're telling me is music to my ears. I understand it well. In fact, I've advocated much of that, if not all of that. My question to you, however, is we are easy here at Netroots to tell that story. How do you tell that story around Athens, where it's completely red, with a whole lot of people who have not, I don't want to call them uneducated, I want to call them indoctrinated. How do you break that side? I mean, you're coming to this race at an expense to yourself. How do you plan on making that expense worthwhile by convincing those people in your district?
Well, I think the idea of a social bill of rights, focusing on jobs, focusing on being able to make use of one's personal responsibility, not being stuck on a dole, but being able to actually work, and also to have dignity at work, to have a fair share in the running of one's workplace. This has an immediate appeal to everyone.
It does. But
and if one speaks about the positive solutions, the bold solutions that no Democratic candidates have been putting out there, I think I can get through.
Now let me
break through the Republican.
I want to break you right there because, and this is very important. What I tell all liberal progressives who have all these great ideas, the one thing that we have to come out with is, people say, how do you pay for it? They don't realize that an economic system is man-made. So you can pay for anything you want to pay for if you want to change the economic system. They don't understand that. You have to write that down in a manner that says, this is how we get from here to there. Are you ready to do that?
I'm ready to do that, and I want to put forward complete transformation of our system of taxation. Because I think we need to move the burden of support for all of these programs that allow us to exercise our rights. It should be put more and more on a wealth tax, a highly graduated wealth tax. Because wealth is where the greatest inequality of resources to be found, and we have the greatest amount of wealth accumulated by any nation in human history. It's close to $95 trillion. The top 1% have as much wealth as the bottom 90%, and it's sitting there, these trillions of dollars, unused. So we need to mobilize it, and this will grow.
Yes, but it's
not just a matter of redistributing a fixed amount.
Now, Professor, it's worse than that. The reality is most of that wealth created is undeserved wealth. In other words, when I write, I call most of that stolen wealth. But I like your plan. I think a lot of people will like your plan, and it's been a pleasure speaking to Professor Richard Dien Winfield. Good luck.
Okay, thank you.
And you take your business.
And people can find out more by going to my website, richarddienwinfield.com, DIEN.
You know what? Shame on me that I forgot to ask how to get in touch. Tell them again, please.
Okay, you can find out more about me on my website, richarddienwinfield.com, DIEN, also on my Facebook page and YouTube channel, also under Richard Dien Winfield.
And I will make sure and add this as we put this piece out to the professor's website. Thank you very much.
This is KPFT 90.1 FM, Houston. We'll be right back as soon as Shannon is done giving us an update on the weather and the traffic. Welcome back to Politics Done Right with Egberto Willies. Let's get busy with some more interviews.
I am with Rahul Mahajan of Our Wisconsin Revolution. Rahul, welcome to Netroots Nation. Why don't you tell me a little bit about, you guys are out of Wisconsin. I hate to say, first of all, it was sort of depressing what occurred in Wisconsin in the last election. Why did that happen?
Well, yeah, so it's an interesting question why Wisconsin, which is basically a purple state, I mean, it's maybe a slight Democratic majority in the population, has turned violently red in terms of its politics.
Right.
And it goes right back, as a lot of things do, to the 2010 midterm elections. Mm-hmm. We got Scott Walker in as governor. The first thing he did was promulgate Act 10, which was the essential destruction of the public sector unions. Mm-hmm. In Wisconsin, that's when we occupied the state capitol and had these massive labor marches.
Right.
And, you know, ever since then, so a lot of the power of organized opposition to the Republican agenda has been destroyed, while simultaneously the Democratic Party in Wisconsin has not really risen to the challenge. So Russ Feingold, for example, who is incredibly popular around the state,
right.
long progressive record, he ended up running a rather tame campaign, sort of coordinated with Hillary Clinton's, and not really doing the kind of outreach that to people who are likely to be swing voters that they should have. And so basically, I think there was a relative lack of inspiration from the Democratic Party, and a very extremely repressive voter ID law.
Right.
So hundreds of thousands of people who might have voted didn't have the chance, especially in the Milwaukee area.
Now, in as much as all of that is true, it's true that all of this didn't happen overnight. So it seems like a functional Democratic Party should have seen these things occurring and fought it as they were occurring, right?
Yeah, we could say the same thing about the anti-union law, but the Democratic Party was almost blindsided by it. In fact, they reacted quickly once we had the massive protests and occupied the Capitol, but they had no strategy going in.
Right.
So there's a certain kind of lack of vision among the Democratic Party and among people who are sort of entrenched in various positions where they didn't have to really compete in the freewheeling political marketplaces today.
Right. Well, now you have an organization that is intent on solving that problem. Why don't you tell me a little bit about that?
Okay, so our Wisconsin Revolution is an official state affiliate of our Revolution, the national Bernie Sanders affiliated organization.
Right.
And the idea is, to put it most simply, we want to sort of redraw the political map, redraw the lines of division, so that a lot of people who right now identify themselves as conservative or right-wing or Republican because they think that the Democratic Party is elitist and doesn't care about working people. So who knows why they think the Republican Party does. So we want to get them on our side.
Right.
We also want to get the increasing number of people who feel just disaffected with the system. So our approach is, I guess I would call it a kind of new populist approach, an anti-racist, inclusive populism to sort of combat the very racist, exclusionary populism that is kind of sweeping the United States and other countries. And we want to do it by much more direct, regular engagement with the electorate, by having a real volunteer-based, massive grassroots mobilization. We already have several hundred people around the state who have actively worked on things for OWR, or Wisconsin Revolution. We had a state convention with about 200 people in attendance where we actually democratically elected a board, so we're not in the sort of traditional NGO model of a mailing list and a bunch of staff. We really are a grassroots organization, and we're planning to run candidates and subject candidates to litmus tests and get candidates who already have their hats in the ring to commit to a progressive agenda.
Now, how can people reach you? You're a Wisconsin organization, so how can they reach you, and how can they be a part of your movement?
Well, so you can go to our website, ourwisconsinrev.com. It's ourwisconsinrev.com. And so there you can get on our mailing list. You can go through a slightly more involved process to actually sign up as a member and get access to member services, which include things like we're building a public officials database, so you can find out who in your area is going to be up, who's vulnerable, who you might want to target, who you might want to run against. We want to encourage as many people as we can to run for office. But the best way is start with ourwisconsinrev.com and go from there, and we'll get in touch with you.
Rahul Mahajan, thank you very much.
Well, thanks for talking to me.
Great day. Hello, ma'am. What's your name?
Anoa Changa.
Anoa, are you from here in Georgia?
I live here in Georgia currently, yes.
Now, there was a huge protest against Stacey Evans in the main ballroom at Netroots Nation 2017. As happened in Arizona, we had a whole lot of upset progressives in there because because a whole lot of black women with quite a few white allies and others decided to protest this woman. Tell me your story. What is it that's occurring that made this protest occur?
I mean, what's occurring is what we've seen recently, like I was just discussing earlier, what we've seen recently is this, what folks will denounce as a litmus test in some instances when we're talking about, issues of whether it's protecting abortion rights. We're willing to be flexible on so much when we're trying to protect white progressive candidates, white progressive elected officials, to get people on board and in line. However, when it comes to some of the other black elected officials that we're seeing, there is a really high standard that's placed on them in terms of whether or not they're acting progressively or whatever. I'm not taking issue with whether or not we critique or criticize people's records. I absolutely believe in that. I think that's the foundation of what we consider our democracy right now. We need to be asking the real questions, and people should be able to answer to those real questions. I was just asked earlier, are we going to do something involving Stacey Abrams? I think Stacey Abrams, if she is pushed by the community or asked questions or presented, with the opportunity to express herself, she will do so. With Stacey Evans, she has been given a pass. What happened today was the fact that Stacey Evans was given time at the most largest progressive gathering in the country to speak, and there is a complicated issue in terms of her stance on education. So while she would like to chant hope, 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 referring to the Hope Scholarship Program for college here in Georgia, you can't get to college if you don't have adequate protections in terms of pre-K and K through 12. And her support for school privatization, for vouchers, for just other issues. These are things that people slam Cory Booker on a regular basis. Cory Booker was not asked to be on that stage today with the NEA. So if he had, we would be doing the same thing. It's about the issue itself. So if we're going to make this about education, as many people have started doing already, they keep saying this is the education issue about hope. No, we need to be honest, because education is more than just free college. Free college is something that, while it can be beneficial, if you don't have the adequate preparation, college preparation, college preparedness is a serious issue when you're talking about black, brown children, we're talking about poor children generally. And when we're talking about the rural communities that Stacey Evans, claims to be from and a part of and, wanting to support, these are communities that also would be hard hit by these types of policies. It is not in the best interest of children. It's in the best interest of the private entities that come into play to take the public funds away. Do we have a problem with the way our public education system is? Yes, we absolutely do, and we do need to pursue alternatives. And I hope both candidates will listen to community leaders, to teachers, to parents, in improving the education system should one of them become governor. However, this is not about, wanting to do something political to undermine, her chances or anything. This is about being real. She's being posited as this great champion of education because of one thing only, the Hope Scholarship. And yes, that is important. I'm a mother of an 11th grader. It's very, very important to me here in Georgia. Hopefully my kid stays in state so it'll benefit her. But at the same time, there's all these other issues in terms of the way our K through 12 system, and the way our pre-K, issues with funding. There's all types of stuff. So it's a complicated issue that needs more nuance than it has been getting thus far. And that's what we were talking about. Trust black women, people need to listen. People need to listen. Like I said earlier, we are the backbone. I do not consider myself a Democrat. I vote Democrat, but I am not a Democrat. But we are the backbones of democracy. Whether we're talking about third-party formations, whether we're talking about, different organizational work, whether we're talking about the Democratic Party itself, we are the reason why, shit moves. Excuse my language, I'm so sorry.
That's fine.
It's a very emotional moment. But yeah, so that's what it's about. And it's not about, you need to vote or support someone or you need to stand with me solely because I'm a black woman, but I'm on the right side of this and you need to just trust my judgment and walk in formation.
Okay, I want to end with a very important question because I think you touch on something that is a larger issue than just the Abrams. What's the first?
Abrams and Evans.
And Evans, a much deeper issue. and that is the pass that many are given within the progressive movement if they are not a candidate of color.
Well,
I think it is very important that that comes out, because some of the reactions we also got in the room was distinctive of the same thing we saw with the Black Lives Matter change that occurred in Arizona. What's interesting is that what the Black Lives Matter event in Arizona did was immediately change the platform or the stump speech and platform that Bernie Sanders was running on, which says these things, as disruptive as they are, work.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, for those who are like been out of shape or this is not how we do things, I had a former state representative who also was the Georgia lead on the Bernie campaign just comment on another live stream that this is not how we do things. This is not how we do things. We also don't, position people. No, go ahead.
If I may add, this is not the way things are done if they are done right. In other words, if people have no other avenue, this is what occurs. A woman in there asked me, she said, if we're looking for democracy, shouldn't this woman get the opportunity to speak? The reality is, yes, but again, there was not. Exactly.
It's a problem, right? If we're supposed to be a gathering of progressives, I mean, they messed up with having someone else who's not necessarily progressive on the stage Friday night as well. I mean, this is also in response, and I appreciate the response of Netroots ultimately to agree that this is what democracy looks like. They're recognizing and adapting and understanding, and hoping we'll have further conversations going forward. But at the same time, to your question about what happens to candidates of color, and even though there's been a lot of commentary, particularly around Kamala Harris recently, that I don't necessarily agree with, one point that stood out very well was something that Zerlina Maxwell wrote. She wrote that, there are loops, there are jumps, there's hoops that black electeds, as well, particularly black women, have to go through to get support. That's something that we need to change, right? We should be able to be strong on the issues. We should be able to be the best possible person for the community, in addition to the fact that we're strong black women, right? Like, so there is a bias towards us in these spaces. I mean, call it whiteness, call it white supremacy. I know folks are like freaking out about what happened in Charlottesville, but that's America. This is America. We struggle with it inside of, the progressive movement, the Democratic Party, third party spaces as well. There is no sudden like, oh my God, we're progressive, so we don't have these issues as well. I mean, when we look at what is happening and the way, black candidates do not get the same level of support unless they have a huge movement of their own people behind them, as we've seen with, Chokwe Lumumba down in Jackson, Mississippi, as we've seen out in Richmond, California, as we've seen in, Seattle with Nikita Oliver. Like, it takes us as a community to stand by and get, our issues front and center. We can't keep playing their game. We saw what happened to Keith Ellison in the DNC chair race. We've seen what happened to Donna Edwards in her race. We've seen this, Dwight Bullard down in Florida. Like, we've seen how they will pile on when they don't want you, a strong black person of intelligence and integrity, to be in a particular position. So that happens, that's real, and we need to deal with it.
The last thing, that's what happens when we have invisibility.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Anoa Changa.
We spend a lot of time deconstructing the news, trying to parse it into a form that everybody can understand. We try to find those little nitpicks where it flies above the fray, etc. If you really like these videos that we do, I want to ask a big favor. Please go ahead, number one, subscribe to our channel, and number two, please join if you can. Thank you so kindly for watching. Keep watching. Please remember to share. We must populate the entire internet with our progressive message, a message that we know is what most Americans say that they want. So help us, please join.